CQ ships with a number of different mobile emulators, so authors can actually test their content on mobile devices without having to own the device. Now, CQ uses a standard called the Wireless Universal Resource File, and these wireless universal resource files can be configured with specific settings for each device. And this is very, very powerful because you can give your authors the ability to be able to get an exact fine-tuned experience for a multitude of different devices without actually having to own those devices. Let's explore how to configure this for our authors. Okay, so the first thing I'd like you to do is open up CRXDE, and in your training components folder, let's create a new folder called emulators. Okay, so I'm going to say emulators here. Okay, so there's our new folder called emulators. And then directly below that, I want you to create a new component called My Emulator. So I'm just going to say new component, My Emulator. I'm going to call this My Emulator. And then for the description, call it Training Emulator. And let's inherit from the existing emulator. And that's located under WCM Mobile Components /emulators/base. We're going to inherit from this, okay? And we don't need the actual JSP because we're going to use the JSPs that actually ship with CQ. So you can delete that JSP right there. Okay, so go ahead and click OK. And then what we're going to use is we're going to utilize the actual library that ships with CQ, and we're just going to copy and paste, but we're going to modify the BlackBerry emulator that's already there. So if you go to libs WCM, okay, and you go down here to mobile, and it's under components, emulators, and then you'll see the BlackBerry. Then you'll see this node here called CSS. This is a CQ client library folder. Take this and copy this CSS node and paste that up into our own custom emulator that we're going to create. So you should see you have your CSS client library there. And now right-click the My Emulator, and let's create a new node under here. Okay, so I'm going to say New Node, and I'm going to call this CQ Emulator Config. All right, and this is going to be an NT unstructured node. So change this to NT unstructured. Okay, there's our CQ Emulator node. And then let's add the following properties directly to this node that we just created. So this is actually a BlackBerry device that can rotate. So I'm going to add in a property called can rotate. This is a Boolean. So I'll put in Boolean, and I'm going to set that to true. Now the default emulator that ships with CQ on BlackBerry devices, they can't rotate. So we're defining this here. And again, default BlackBerry devices don't have touchscreen capabilities. So let's also add in touch scrolling. And again, this is all documented in CQ, the properties that you can set up here. And let's set that to a Boolean as well. Let's also set that to true. Okay, so there's our can rotate. So again, we're creating an emulator that's close to the BlackBerry, but we can also see that. And you might also want to go and look at some of the iOS devices and the Android devices as well. Great. So now you've done that. Now under your My Emulator component node, let's create a new folder here called Resources. So I'm going to say here, I'll say Resources. Okay, so there's a new folder called Resources. And this we're going to use to store different images for our actual BlackBerry device. Okay, and again, the images there hold the main background image of your emulator and the icon image that'll appear in the sidekick. And this can also be used for fast emulator switching. Okay, so let's go into our code snippets and then go into images here. And you should see that there's the BGPNG, okay, which contains your device. And then there's also the sidekick. Let's just copy them one at a time here. So I'm just going to copy that. There's my BlackBerry device. I'm going to copy that into my resource folder. Okay, and then again in your code snippets, go to the images directory here and also copy the sidekick, what we want to appear in the sidekick. So again, paste that also into your resources folder, just like so. So you should have 2 files in there. And then you'll also see that in your code snippets, you have a thumbnail.png, and this thumbnail.png is also in the images folder. And this is what's going to be actually displayed in the carousel when the author can select between the different types of devices that they want to have. So let's put that in there as well. Okay, so we'll say thumbnail.png. Now what we've done is we've successfully created and configured our own emulator. So let's learn how to actually use this, okay, and let's add it to a mobile device group.